There once was a boy named Liam. Now, Liam, he was on his graduating year of high school, and he was currently getting ready for his last day of school. He was packing his bag with nothing really, just a couple utensils and a yearbook he purchased earlier that year so he can have all his friends sign it. Then Liam, on his way to school, since he lives not too far, he walks. This whole time he was walking to school, he felt like he was being watched. Though every time he turned around, he couldn't see anybody. Now, Liam just decided to go on his way to school and ignore it. And he still felt like he was being watched. Now, he got to the school, and when he was at the gate of the school, he decided to turn around and see if there was someone following him. But he didn't see anyone suspicious. Even there are lots of kids walking up to the school since obviously it's a school day. But he didn't see anyone suspicious who was coming from the direction he came from. So he decided to go about his day, talking with everyone, saying goodbye to all the teachers and his friends, signing yearbooks and getting his signed. The day went by pretty quick, but it would have went by quicker, but he still felt like he was being watched the entire day. He felt as if he's being followed to each and every one of his classes, when he said bye to people, when he took down some final notes that might help him in the future. Everything he did, he felt like he was being watched. He couldn't really do much about this, though, because he didn't know where it was coming from. So he decided to just ignore it, thinking it's probably his nerves of it being his last day. So, by the time school ended, he waited up at the school gate for his best friend, who eventually came, and they said goodbye, and for the last time, since they probably wouldn't be able to see each other ever again, since they have different ideas in mind for their future. Now, Liam started to head back home, and he still felt as if he's being watched. But no matter how hard he looked or listened, he couldn't hear anybody. Every now and then he'll hear footsteps, but that would just be other kids on their way home too. And there was nothing suspicious going on with those kids, so he just decided to go home, thinking it was probably nothing. When he got home, he went inside, but as soon as he entered the door, he started to feel really tired for some reason. He just thought it was from the stress, so he just headed back upstairs to his room. And he went upstairs to his room and put his bag down, taking out the yearbook that he had everyone sign. He thought he wouldn't get this many signatures, but apparently he was popular and didn't even know it, so he got a lot more signatures than he thought he would. He put the signature book and yearbook and stuff on his bookshelf and just left it there, looking through his bag, seeing if he needed to put anything else away. He didn't, so he just set it aside. And he noticed that one of his 2 windows in his room, one was slightly cracked open, which he thought was weird because he had closed it the night before he had went to bed. He went over to it and opened it, then looked out the window. I mean, it's not like anyone could open it because he's on the 2nd story of a house, and there's no way to the window. So he thought he must have forgotten to close it, so he closed it and locked it. He went over to the other window to see if that one was cracked open too, but that one was perfectly shut and locked tight, which he thought was a little weird. Because if he had locked and shut that one, he thought he might have remembered to shut and lock the other one. He decided it was nothing, and he took off his school uniform and changed into normal casual clothes. But when he was hanging up his school uniform, he seen in the corner of his eye what looked like someone peeking in through one of the windows. Now, when he looked over, no one was there. He thought this was weird and thought he was just imagining things, so he went over to the window and looked out, and there's still no way to the window, and he seen no one there. So he thought nothing of it, thought his eyes were just playing tricks on him. So he laid down in the bed and fell asleep, and he dreamed good dreams. But he heard weird noises in his sleep, but he thought it was just his mind playing tricks on him and him dreaming. So he didn't really think much of it, and he was too tired to open his eyes and double check. By the time he woke up, he was in a completely different room, and at first he thought this was just a dream, like just another dream. But things felt more real than a dream. He pinched himself and he felt the pain, and he didn't even believe that it wasn't a dream, even though he felt the pain. He looked around, and the room, it was a decent-sized room. It had a chair, and in front of the chair was a TV with consoles hooked up to it. And there was a bookshelf across from the bed he was laying on. And then there was a clock on the wall. The time didn't seem to work, and the time seemed off on it. So he didn't pay much mind to it. There were 2 doors in the room. One right on the side of the bed, just several steps away, and another in the corner on the opposite side, like kind of in front of the bed, which seemed to be cracked open a little. He assumed one was a door to a bathroom, but before he could get up and investigate, he heard footsteps coming into one of the doors, the one that wasn't cracked open. He heard a lock, the lock on the door unlock, and someone walk in. Now, this person was wearing pretty much all black, a black hoodie with the hood up and a black hat, and then also a black mask, so only his eyes shone. And his eyes were a deep reddish brown, and Liam was fixated with them, thinking he'd seen them before, but he couldn't quite remember. But they were very pretty to Liam. Now, at this moment, Liam kind of suspected something was going on, because he woke up in a place he didn't know, and apparently the way out was locked, and he didn't know that until this person came in, and the person was completely hiding their identity, other than their eyes, of course. The person said to them, "So, you're finally awake, huh? I've been waiting for you to wake up. I know it must be strange being here without really any explanation, but with time you will know. But just know you're here so I can protect you, because you're very special to me. So you will stay in this room like a good little boy, and you won't cause any trouble. Now, you must be hungry." And with that, the person left the room once again and locking the door behind them. Liam was very confused. He didn't quite register some of the words they had said, and didn't understand some of the things he called him like a good little boy. He didn't understand. He kind of is now picturing like what this person is making, and figured he's going to make a meal for him since he suggested that he must be hungry. Now Liam got up from the bed and decided to take a look around, now figuring out he was kidnapped. And he decided to try to find anything that could help him. There wasn't really anything useful in the room, so he just looked around, and then he went to the door that was cracked open slightly and opened it. And he was right. It was a bathroom. It was a decent-sized bathroom. There was a bathtub, a pretty big one. Seems could fit maybe 2 people, 3 if they're on the smaller side of people. Like, you can fit maybe 4 tiny kids. And then there was, right next to that, there was a cupboard. He opened the cupboard and there were just towels, some simple medical supplies like band-aids, bandages, cotton, stuff like that. Nothing too interesting that would help him escape. But then there were also clothes in there, and weirdly enough, the clothes seemed to be his exact size, which he thought was very strange, seeing as how he had never really told anyone his clothes size, so he was thinking it was just a coincidence. There at the sink, there was a comb. It seemed unused, so he thought maybe he could use that if he ever needed to comb his hair, which he hoped that he could escape before he needed to comb his hair. There's a mirror in front of the sink, and he looked at his reflection, and he just seemed normal. Like, there are no injection points on his neck or anything that would have knocked him out. So he didn't think that was how the kidnapper had gotten him. He left the room and noticed a long mirror by the other door that he hadn't noticed before. He went over to it and inspected it, and it was attached to the wall, so he couldn't move it around or anything. There seemed nothing suspicious about it, so he just left it be. And at that moment, he heard footsteps coming back to the room, so he quickly got back onto the bed and waited for the person to come back in. As soon as the door was unlocked again, the person walked in and locked it behind them. They were carrying a plate of food and what looked like a tray. They set the tray down next to the bed and placed down the food. It was just some normal breakfast items, pancakes, bacon, sausage, and Liam just looked at it. He didn't know if the person had put anything in it, any drugs, poison, something to make him sleep. He didn't know, so he thought he'd wait. So he looked up at the person, but they didn't seem to have anything to say. So he took the fork and he cut up some of the pancakes, inspecting each one to see if there was anything he could see that looked like a weird liquid or powder that was put on it. But he didn't really see anything, so he decided to start eating. And the food was really good. So he kept eating because he was getting even hungrier the more he ate. Once he finished his food, the kidnapper silently took his plate and fork and everything and the tray and left the room, locking the door behind him, of course. As soon as the footsteps faded, Liam got up off the bed and inspected the door the kidnapper had just left out of. It seemed like a key kind of lock. It needs a key to be unlocked on the side he was in. And there might be other locks on the outside too, like maybe a deadbolt or a chain lock, but he wouldn't know. Other than that, it seemed like a normal, sturdy wooden door. He went over to the bed and looked under it, and he found a box under there. So he pulled the box out of under the bed and looked inside of it, and there was just more clothes in there. They were all around his size, too, which he thought was still kind of weird. He continued to look around, but there wasn't really much in the room. I mean, there were some movies, some game consoles, games, stuff to keep him entertained, but not really much other than that. There was a bedside table next to the bed, so he inspected that, and so he opened the drawer to the bedside table, and he looked in, but there wasn't really anything in there. There was a few books, nothing really of interest, and then pencil and a notebook, and that was it. So he closed that, and he was kind of confused on what he should do now, because he didn't really see anything that would help him escape, and the kidnapper had left. So he decided to go back into the bathroom and decide to take a shower. Maybe taking a shower will clear his mind and help him think about a way to escape. So he shut the door to the bathroom once he was inside, but unfortunately the door didn't have a lock. But he thought that maybe it was because the kidnapper didn't want him locking himself in a room the kidnapper could not get into. So he thought that kind of made sense. So he got into the shower and took a shower, and then he put on some of the clothes that were in the cabinet, which were weirdly his size, and then he also used one of the towels that were in there. He went over to the sink and mirror and looked at his reflection again, thinking back on if he ever felt looking back to when he was tired when he had first gotten home. He thought, thinking maybe at one point before he had gotten home he got pricked by something. Then he remembered when he was walking by his neighbor's flowers, he had seen a bee and then felt a prick in his shoulder, but he thought it was just the bee stinging him. So he turned back as he could and turned slightly so he could see in the mirror to see his shoulder, and right there was a bright purplish bruise there. He felt the mark and it still kind of stung, and he figured that must have been where he was pricked by a needle or something for something to be injected into him for him to be tired. He figured it doesn't really matter now since he's already here. So he went back to the room and he heard footsteps again and figured the kidnapper was coming back again. And so the door unlocked and the kidnapper walked in and locked it behind him once again. And the kidnapper looked at him and said, "So, you decided to take a shower, huh? Does that mean you're finally getting comfortable around me? Maybe you're starting to warm up to me. I mean, that's all I really want. I want you to feel safe here, because is where you'll stay for a while." And the kidnapper just looked around. He didn't really, probably looking for anything that was touched, like if Liam had touched anything, broke anything, or was like trying to dig a hole through the wall or something. But he didn't see what he was looking for, so he looked satisfied. He turned back to Liam and said, "There are games and movies over there in the corner to keep you occupied. If you need anything, you could just yell and I'll hear eventually. Just know I want you to be safe. Please don't try to hurt yourself or anything while in here. I mean, it wouldn't really do any good. I mean, there's no way you could really escape this room unless I let you out. but I have no plans of letting you out until you actually warm up to me and you start liking me and don't want to leave. And with that, the kidnapper once again leaves. And Liam goes over to the consoles and inspects them, seeing if there's any secrets attached to them or anything. But he didn't really see anything, so he decided to just put in a movie. So he puts in a movie, just a random one from on the shelf, and just lets it play in the background while he's inspecting the room. He still didn't really see anything, so he just decided maybe there might be something under the bed. Or not under the bed, but like under the mattress. So technically on the bed frame. So he lifted up the mattress and looked under, but yet again he didn't see anything. And so he kept looking, but without any luck, he couldn't really find anything that would help him escape. He couldn't find anything sharp or anything that he could use to dig or lockpick or anything. It seemed the kidnapper really had thought things out. Then he started to think about all the things the kidnapper had said. And he thought maybe he would be able to trick the kidnapper into giving him the kidnapper's name, or maybe even moving the mask so he could see the kidnapper's face. Now he thought up of a plan, and maybe if he could say to the kidnapper that he wanted to cook something, maybe the kidnapper would lead him out of the room to the kitchen to make something. But he didn't know if that would work, but he might. He might be able to make it, since he thought the kidnapper might just be there, might have just kidnapped him to protect him. So, when the kidnapper finally came back, Liam asked him if he was allowed to know his name. And the kidnapper said, "My name? Well, I think it's a little soon to give you my name, seeing as you don't really trust me quite yet." And Liam said, "What about your face? Can I at least see your face? I mean, it's only fair, right?" And Liam held his breath, thinking he might have made the kidnapper mad. And the kidnapper just stared at him, thinking. And the kidnapper said, "All right, fine. I'll show you my face, but on one condition. I'll show you my face if you kiss me." Liam just stared at the kidnapper, thinking. This would have been his first kiss with anyone, and he didn't really want to kiss him. But he thought if he could kiss him and at least see his face, maybe he'll recognize him, and when he escapes, he could tell the police, and the police could catch him. So Liam said, "All right, I'll kiss you as long as you show me your face." Now the kidnapper had slightly pulled up his mask to reveal his lips. So Liam moved closer to him to go in for a kiss. But when he was just about to kiss him, the kidnapper held up a hand in front of him, stopping him from kissing him. And the kidnapper averted his eyes away from Liam, saying, "I didn't expect you to actually kiss me." And you could tell from the kidnapper's voice, and his face obviously, what could be seen of his face anyways, that he was blushing bright red. And he didn't expect Liam to actually go to kiss him. But the kidnapper said, "I'll still show you my face, just I didn't expect you to try to actually kiss me." So the kidnapper took off his mask, and Liam looked at him. He didn't recognize his face, but when he first saw his face, he was just thinking how attractive the kidnapper was. But he thought maybe if he acts like he liked him, since it seems the kidnapper likes him, maybe if he acts like he likes him and that he trusts him, maybe the kidnapper will let him escape. Or let him out of the room so he can escape. So Liam moved a little closer to the kidnapper and said, "You know, you look better without that mask on." The kidnapper just stared at him, kind of confused, not expecting Liam to have said that. And the kidnapper asked Liam, "What are you planning? Because this is not like you. I mean, I didn't even know you were into guys in the first place." And Liam looked at the kidnapper, kind of shocked, since he thought the kidnapper knew a lot about him. And he said, "Well, I like all genders. I like girls and guys, so can you blame me?" The kidnapper said, "No, I can't blame you. I mean, I personally only like guys." And then an idea came to Liam. If he could get the kidnapper to tell him more about himself, by telling the kidnapper more about himself, maybe he would be able to learn the kidnapper's name eventually. But he didn't think that would really work. I mean, it would take time for the kidnapper to actually trust him. So the kidnapper left the room finally, and Liam left Liam to his thoughts. He didn't really know where to go from here, since he's running out of ideas. So he just lays back down on the bed, staring at the ceiling and thinking. He didn't really know what he was going to do or how he was going to escape. So he got up from the bed and checked the door, thinking it was going to be locked because obviously the kidnapper always locks the door when he comes in and out. But to Liam's surprise, the door was actually unlocked. He was thinking maybe he had made the kidnapper so flustered that he had forgotten to lock the door on his way out. So he opened the door quietly and slowly as he could, and looked out. It was a long hallway with not really any doors. And the room he was in was at one end of the hallway, and at the other end of the hallway, it seemed to open up into maybe a living room. He couldn't really tell. It was a very long hallway. So he exited the room and slowly shut the door behind him. And he, as quietly as he could, walked down the hallway. And once he got to the other side, where what seemed to be a living room was, he just peeked in to see if he could see anyone. But he didn't see anyone at all. He didn't see a kidnapper, he didn't see any pets, or he didn't even see any pictures. So he entered the room and looked around. To the right, it seemed there was another room that led to maybe a kitchen, and then it seemed there were stairs that led up. So he went up the stairs quietly, careful not to make any of the stairs creak so he wouldn't be caught. And he went up and up and up. And the stairs led to a door. So he looked to see if he could see under the door, but the door was too low, and so he couldn't see. So he slowly turned the doorknob and cracked the door open slightly and looked through the crack in the door. He didn't see or hear anybody, so he thought the coast was clear. So he slowly opened the door and he left the stairwell and as quietly as he could shut the door behind him. Now it seemed he was now in an area between two rooms, which seemed like a dining room and another living room. Now, he still didn't hear anyone, so he went into the living room thinking maybe he'll find a door to the outside there. But he thought it was very weird because in each room he went to, there were no windows at all. So when he went into the living room up the stairs and seen no windows, he started to question the building he was in. Because why wouldn't a living room or anything else have no windows? He seen more stairs going up and thought maybe he was underground. So he went up the stairs, and it seemed like this area had bedrooms and bathrooms and stuff. But when he got to the top of the stairs, he started to hear someone talking. And the person talking kind of sounded like the kidnapper. So he went over and went to the door he heard the kidnapper talking to and put his ear up against it to hear what he was talking, because maybe he could find a clue on how to escape. As he was listening to the kidnapper talk, he started to think, why would the kidnapper kidnap him? What reason? No one really ever liked him, really, liked him, at school or anything. And his parents didn't really care much for him. He pretty much lived on his own. So why would the kidnapper choose him? Was it because he didn't really have anyone he was dating? Or that his parents didn't really care much about him? Were they trying to get money out of him, maybe? Trying to deal with police as a hostage situation, maybe? He didn't know. But as he was listening to the kidnapper talk to probably over the phone with someone, he started to think maybe the kidnapper kidnapped him for something other than, money from police and stuff. So he kept listening, and the way the kidnapper was talking on the phone sounded different to the way the kidnapper talked to him. The kidnapper sounded more aggressive over the phone, but when the kidnapper talked to him, it's as if the kidnapper had relaxed, and he had relaxed and calmed down, and he would talk nicely to him, as if he wants him to like him. So Liam was thinking, maybe the kidnapper actually really does like him, likes him. So he's thinking, maybe the kidnapper isn't that bad. But he still didn't want to be held there against his will. So he moved along to other rooms and listened to each one, but he didn't hear anyone else. And he didn't find any windows still. So he went to the room furthest away from the room the kidnapper was in and opened it. It seemed to be another bedroom, but there was no sign anyone had been staying in that room. And finally, he found a window. But the window was covered by curtains, so he went over to the curtains and pulled them back. But then there was no window. It was just a brick wall behind the curtains, which he thought was very weird. Maybe the kidnapper just put him up for decoration or something. So he moved to a different room and opened that one. Of course, shutting the doors behind him so the kidnapper wouldn't know. And yet again, there was more curtains, but with bricks behind the door. Or not door, behind the curtains, where the window should have been. So he kept moving to each room, and each room had curtains, but no window. And when he found a bathroom, there were not even any curtains. So the last room that was left was the room the kidnapper was in. But the room the kidnapper was in had fallen silent. There was no talking at all. He couldn't hear any footsteps or creaks of a bed or floorboards or the sliding of any closet doors or anything. So he didn't know if the kidnapper had went to sleep or if the kidnapper left the room when he was inspecting another room. So he started to panic because he didn't know where the kidnapper was and he didn't want to get caught. So what Liam did was he went down to try to look under the door to see if he could see any shadows or anyone. Because maybe the kidnapper had some windows in his room that weren't all bricked up. He didn't see anyone, and the light of the room was off, so he thought maybe the kidnapper had left the room. So he slowly tried the door, and it was unlocked. So he opened it very, very slowly, and peeking in through, and cracking the door and peeking inside. So he didn't really see anyone, so he slowly and quietly entered the room. Now this room was bigger than the other bedrooms, and it had a wall, and behind that wall was where the bed was, so Liam couldn't see the bed from where he was standing. So Liam was slowly moving and looking to see if there was anyone else in the room. And when he was rounding the corner to the wall, he slowly peeked behind it to see if there was anyone in the bed. But he didn't see anyone, so he was thinking that the coast was clear. So the kidnapper probably had left the room, and Liam felt lucky that he had not gotten caught when in the other rooms, if the kidnapper really had left the room. And there were 3 sets of curtains in this room, so Liam went up to them and opened one of them, and it was actually a window. It wasn't bricked up. So Liam looked out the window, and it was pitch black outside, so it must have been night. But he seen some lights from buildings and stuff around him. But it seemed that he was really high up in, like, a very, very tall building. And that kind of confused him, because he didn't understand how he would be very high up in a building if the only stairs up and down were down to the area he was in and up to the area he is in now, and then obviously the main floor. So he decided there must have been an elevator or a door leading out to a hallway with other doors and stuff somewhere below, in the floor below where the living room and dining room and stuff were. So he closed the curtain back, leaving it as best he could as he thought he found it, and slowly and quietly left the room, being even more cautious since he doesn't know where the kidnapper is now. Then it hit him. Maybe the kidnapper is going back to the room he was in to check up on him and see what he's doing. And Liam remembered he had left the movie running, so maybe the kidnapper will just listen to the door and hear the movie and think he's still in there. So Liam decided to act fast. He went down the stairs quietly but quickly, looking to make sure the kidnapper wasn't there, and he went to the dining room where he found a door. He tried the door, but it was locked. So he decided maybe that's the way out, since why else would it be locked? And so he went through the dining room where there was another opening to another room, which seemed to be another kitchen. There was another door in here, and it opened up to a big pantry area. So there was nothing really in there other than, of course, food and stuff. Food, supplies, pans, pots. So he closed that, thinking he didn't need any of it. So he moved around that floor looking for a way out or for a key. But then when he was looking through all those rooms, he found another door. He slowly opened the door, which it was unlocked, and it seemed to be an office. So he opened the office door and looked in, and he didn't see anyone, so he entered the room and closed it behind him. There were quite a few sets of keys on the wall hanging there, so he didn't know which one might open the door. And inside the office, there was a laptop and what seemed to be security cameras. And then there was a security camera outside the room he was put in when he was kidnapped. None were inside the room, though. But there were some in the living room he was at, and in the kitchen and the dining room. There were cameras all around the house. And he was hoping the kidnapper had not been in that room when he was looking through all those rooms. Because if so, the kidnapper would know right where he is. He looked around frantically to find a key for that door that was locked, but he still couldn't really find a key that looked like it would match, so he just grabbed as many keys as he could, sticking them in his pockets, trying to be as quiet as he can. So when Liam got back to the locked door, he made sure no one was around him and started pulling out the keys, trying each one. And then if once he tried all the keys on one ring, he'd set it aside on the dining room table. Trying to be as quiet as possible, of course. He had made it through pretty much all the keys, and none of them had worked. But he started to hear footsteps coming to where he was. So, he quickly pulled out the last ring of keys and tried all of them, trying to see if any of them would work. The footsteps just kept getting closer and closer and closer, and he didn't know what to do, because the keys were not working. And when he was on the last key, it fit in, so he was frantically trying to turn it to see if it would work and unlock the door. And right when he was able to turn it and unlocked it, the footsteps stopped right at the entrance to the room he was in. He turned around, and there stood the kidnapper, looking at him with surprise on his face. But Liam threw open the door and ran out, slamming the door behind him and running as fast as he could, looking behind him and in front of him to all the sides, trying to figure out where he is and where he needed to go. It looked like he was in some sort of hotel or giant apartment building with a bunch of apartments. Probably some sort of fancy apartment building, probably. Seeing as a hotel probably wouldn't be as big as the room or house-like area he was in with the kidnapper. So he ran, trying to find an elevator or staircase, whichever came first. But he felt as if he was running in circles, because every area he went to looked exactly the same. Aside from, of course, the numbers on the doors. That's the only thing that helped him realize he was not running in circles. Finally, after felt like 10 whole minutes of running around, he finally found an elevator. He clicked the down button and impatiently waited for the elevator. And it seemed the elevator was on the very first floor, and he didn't know what floor he was on, other than the fact that he was very, very high up. So he thought it might take a while for the elevator to get up to him. So he was impatiently waiting, looking around, making sure the kidnapper didn't sneak up behind him, just looking around and stuff. Finally, after what felt like 20 minutes, the elevator had finally come up and opened. There was no one in it, so he rushed into it and pushed the main lobby floor, the floor with the star on it, the button with the star on it. And as soon as the doors to the elevator started to close, he seen the kidnapper rounding the corner, running, and the kidnapper seen Liam in the elevator. But the doors were already about to close. But just as they were about to close, the kidnapper had yelled, "Wait." But when the kidnapper yelled that, Liam was confused, because the voice the kidnapper had just said "wait" in didn't match any of the voices he heard the kidnapper talking in, to him or over the phone. The voice the kidnapper used was much more familiar. He recognized it as if he's heard it for years. So the elevator was slowly going down. But then Liam started to think, if the elevator's moving down this slowly, the kidnapper could probably find another elevator or another staircase and beat Liam down. So Liam started to panic, since he was now stuck in that elevator until he got down to the main floor. So he decided to sit in the corner of the elevator and just wait, since it was going to be a while. So Liam waited and waited and waited. And finally, the elevator slowed to a stop. Now Liam bounced up to his feet and impatiently waited for the doors to open. And when they opened, no one was there. So he was relieved. So he stepped out of the elevator and looked around. And it looked like a lobby. Like as if a lobby you'd see at like a hotel. But not quite hotel. It's as if like a fancy rich person building. There were different areas of the lobby. There's obviously check-in and where people hand off their bags and stuff to be taken to their rooms. And then there are bars and restaurants around, like open areas to just relax at. So Liam was really starting to think that this was a hotel. So he walked out, not trying to run and draw people's eyes to him, because he had no idea where he was or who is working with the kidnapper. So he started walking around looking for the exit. And he found another elevator that was headed down to the first floor, the floor he was on. And he started to panic, and he believed the kidnapper was in that elevator. So Liam, not trying to run and look suspicious, started to walk quicker and going to each individual restaurant and everything, looking in, walking around, and seeing if any of them had a way out. He was also trying to blend in with the people walking around. He still couldn't find a way out, though. He was very confused. Because where would the exit be in the lobby? Like, why wouldn't it be near the front desk? Because it wasn't there. He didn't quite understand until he found a staircase leading down. And he thought maybe this isn't the very first floor. Maybe the elevator is programmed to go to this as the first floor. But there's actually stairs leading down to the actual first floor. So he hurried down the stairs as quick as he could. And when he made it down the stairs and the room opened up, seemed to be another lobby. But there wasn't really as many people in here as there were up there, and he figured it's because there's not much down here. Now, in this room, there are lots of doors that led into different directions. One was labeled the gym. There was a pool area. Then there are a bunch of other doors for many other things, just spread out. But when he went to the area behind the stairs, he found the doors to the exit. But he heard someone starting to run down the stairs, and he figured it's probably the kidnapper, because who else would be hurrying down the stairs that quickly? So he rushed to the front door, or what he thought was the front door. He was pretty sure it was the front door because they were glass doors and he could see the outside through them. But they were locked. The front doors were locked and he couldn't get out. So he looked around, kind of panicking a little. And he seen keys hanging up behind a desk, which seemed like another check-in. So he quickly ran over there and grabbed them because no one was there, and went to the door and tried the keys. Now, there are quite a few keys on this key ring, so he hurried and tried as many of them as they could. And finally, he found one that opened the door. But just as he was able to unlock the door, he felt someone grab his wrist and pull him back. He turned around and seen the kidnapper standing there holding his wrist. The kidnapper looked worried, and Liam was confused. Why would the kidnapper be worried? Is he worried about being arrested? Liam fought back and pushed him away, trying to escape. And so Liam was able to escape from his grasp and ran out the door. When he left the building, it started to rain, which that was weird. I mean, Liam didn't expect it to rain at all, because it seemed like it was perfectly fine before he had left the building. Liam frantically looked around for a place to go, but he didn't know where to go. He didn't know where he was. From behind him, he heard the kidnapper call, "Liam, wait." And yet again, the voice sounded very familiar, like it did before the elevator doors had fully shut. He turned around and faced the kidnapper, who was several steps away. And the kidnapper had said, once again, "Liam, please wait." Now Liam was even more confused because he didn't recognize the kidnapper's face. But for some reason, the kidnapper sounded very familiar. So Liam answered back, "What is it that you want?" And the kidnapper had responded with, "Please, I just want you to stay with me. I want to be able to protect you." And Liam responded with, "Why? Why do you want me here? Why do you want to protect me? Why did you take me from my home?" Now the kidnapper looked at him confused. The kidnapper said, "I didn't take you from your home. I wasn't the one who did that. I took you from people who are trying to use you to get money. I took you to protect you from them. They were the ones who took you from your home." Now it was Liam's turn to be very confused. "What are you talking about?" Liam said. So now the kidnapper said, "Come inside, let's get out of the rain and I'll explain everything to you." Liam hesitated, not really trusting the kidnapper. But Liam said, "Fine, but you gotta stay a good ways away from me." The kidnapper said, "All right, I could do that." So Liam followed the kidnapper decently far behind them, and they sat quite a ways away on a bench. And Liam said, "All right, explain." The kidnapper wasn't looking at Liam, and he started the story. He said his name was Itachi, and that he had been investigating some people in the neighborhood that around where Liam had lived. And apparently that Itachi was trying to find some certain people. Some people who went around kidnapping people for money. And these people were in a completely different area before and had flown to where Liam lived to try to get away from the law. He was trying to get away from the law so that they could continue doing what they did in kidnapping people for money. And they just so happened to see Liam, who Liam goes to a school known for more of rich people, not quite rich, but well-set people went to that school. And so they decided to target him because when he left his home, they seen him leave his home, and it was a decent-sized home. So they thought they could get a lot of money out of him. So they started a plan to target Liam. And when he was on his way home, when he was about to get home, they shot him with a dart that made him tired. And it's a very small bullet, and it doesn't stick in. So they shot him with it. It pricked him, released the drug into him, and fell off of him. And that's how Liam had felt tired and passed out. And so when Liam had went to sleep, they broke into his home and took him. And they brought him to a secluded area in building. And now Itachi had followed them and he wasn't planning to save Liam. He was just planning on catching the people. But when he seen Liam, he kind of felt, true love at first sight. Love at first sight. And he fell in love with Liam. He didn't really know Liam, though, so he was trying not to stray from his mission. So then Itachi talked to some of the people who knew Liam to gather more information about, why the people would have taken him. And Itachi just so happened to talk to Liam's best friend, where Itachi learned that Liam had only recently moved there a couple years back. Now Itachi, he thought Liam looked very, very familiar. So when he heard that, he thought maybe, just maybe, Liam was the person he's been searching for all this time, the person who went missing a couple years ago. So Itachi rushed to where the people who had actually kidnapped Liam were, and he snuck into their hideout, and he calculated everything that was going on. How many people there were, where Liam was, where all the people were, and he figured out what their plan was. So what Itachi did was he waited until the people made contact with the police to try to make a deal. Now, when they did this, they left Liam unguarded because he was still passed out from the drug. So they only had a couple people watching him, which Itachi seemed or thought that it was a good idea to knock those guys out or kill him, whichever came first, and get Liam out of there, and then report back to his boss and let them know that they are good to move in and capture all the people in there. So Itachi quietly moved around to knock out the people who were watching Liam, and he grabbed Liam and got out of there. He then called his boss, informed him that they were good to move in and make the arrest, and then Itachi informed him about Liam. And his boss had suggested that Itachi move him to a very private hotel/apartment area. The lower floors were hotel rooms, and the upper floors were very, very expensive apartments. And Itachi agreed with this, thinking that Liam would be safe there. So, Itachi had already had an apartment there for, temporarily living there to catch the people that they were trying to catch. So he took Liam up to the room and brought him down to the room where Liam had woken up in. Now, Itachi's boss had informed him to wear a disguise in front of Liam because their mission is secret and it's not many people are supposed to know about it. Now, when Itachi was able to get a closer look at Liam, he thought more. And the more he looked at him, the more he realized that he was pretty sure that Liam was the person that he was searching for all this time. That Liam was the person and the whole reason why Itachi took up this job, so that he can find him. And apparently, Itachi was looking for Liam because a couple years back, they lived in a completely different area and they were best friends. And one day, Liam just went missing. And it's not like he didn't move away and his family moved away. That didn't happen. It was just Liam disappearing, like he vanished, as if he never even existed. And a lot of people felt as if he didn't exist, as if like they forgot everything about him. Even Liam's parents forgot about him. Everyone forgot about Liam except Itachi. So after that, Itachi went on a whole search to find Liam, thinking he was in danger. And apparently, Liam's memories had faded, and he was put into a new life as an experiment. So basically, he was kidnapped for an experiment and put into a new life with a new identity. And when Liam heard all of this, as Itachi was speaking, he didn't quite believe it. Liam just looked at Hachi as he told him. But then Liam tried to think back on his past, but he couldn't remember anything. It was all foggy, as if something was keeping him from those memories. So Liam asked Hachi, "Are you able to find a way to restore my memories?" Itachi looked at Liam and said, "Yes, that's what I have been working on all this time. That's the reason I started this job, was one, to find you, and two, to fix your memories, because I knew your memories would have been tampered with." Itachi reached into his pocket and pulled out a little bottle of a weird greenish liquid. Itachi told Liam to drink it, saying it would fix his memory. Now, Liam hesitated because he didn't know if he could trust the kidnapper or not. So he decided, why not? Because he had no clue where he was, and the story kind of checks out with his missing memory. So Liam drank the liquid, and he felt very dizzy and lightheaded, and felt like he might pass out. But right when he was about to pass out, he remembered something. And he remembered stuff about his past that he had forgotten a long time ago. And so Liam ended up passing out, and Itachi caught him and brought him back up to the apartment, where he laid him in one of the guest bedrooms, with the door unlocked, of course. And Liam, as he was passed out, he is remembering everything that had happened, like a dream, like as if he's dreaming the memories he had forgotten. And once Liam finally woke up and looked at Itachi, he remembered everything. Him and Itachi used to be best of friends. And he actually liked Itachi, liked him. And he had plans to confess to him the day he was taken. And Liam felt heartbroken when he remembered this, because he had treated Itachi so badly when they met because he thought he kidnapped him. And he just looked at Itachi, and Itachi looked back at him. And Liam said, "I'm so sorry. I forgot everything, and I wish I didn't." Itachi looked at him and said, "It's okay. It's not your fault." And Liam just sat there on the bed, thinking about his past, remembering everything. And then he stood up and walked over to Itachi and hugged him, because he had realized how much he missed Itachi, even though he didn't have any memories about him. He had forgotten about him, but he still missed him, but he didn't know it was him he was missing. And right then and there, as he was hugging Itachi and Itachi was hugging him back, Liam decided that he was going to stay there with Itachi. Just those two together. And Itachi felt the same way, and they decided to stay there together. And they ended up together. And they ended up marrying in the future, and of course they were deeply in love and loved each other very much. The end.